Did you know your body is 70% water? Water composes 70% of your muscle, 25% of fats, 75% of your brain, and over 80% of your blood. Alkaline water regulates your body temperature, cushions and protects vital organs, aids in digestion, transports nutrients within each cell, and dispels acidic waste. Alkaline water can also help prevent kidney stones caused by the body chelating excess acid with calcium. One study showed that a woman who drank more than 5 glasses of water a day had a 45% less risk of colon cancer, also a result of excess acidity in the lower bowel. Yet another study showed a decreased chance of bladder cancer when more than 2.5 quarts of fluid were consumed daily. Maintaining your level of hydration is very important to the overall health of your pancreas and your body as a whole. You should be drinking at least 4 liters of alkalized and energized water, or about 1 gallon per day, based on 70 kilos or 154 pounds. So what is pH Miracle Activated, Alkalized, and Energized Water, you might ask? Well, to answer this question, we must first look at a brief history. In the 1930s, 2 men made major discoveries that we are only now beginning to understand and act upon. Victor Schauberger was a forester in the Australian mountains. He discovered that water is a living entity that has truly remarkable powers as it emerged from high mountain springs. If it were allowed to run between cool, shady banks of the original forest, it would remain energized and be able to enrich the whole of the watershed in which it flowed. Indeed, the whole and ecology of the land and animals, including man, depends on this energized water. Schauberger showed that if the forest cover that shaded the banks of the watercourses was logged and the water therefore became heated by the sun, the life-giving properties of primary water were gradually dissipated. The whole water cycle became disrupted. The fertility of the soil was depleted, and so was the health of all who drank the water. Meanwhile, in France, Claude Vincent was commissioned by the French government to find out why certain areas of France have high levels of cancer than others. Professor Vincent was a hydrologist. He therefore tested the water in these areas and confirmed independently what Schauberger had found. The areas that had high level of health and low incidence of cancer had water that came from deep artesian springs and was highly energized. The converse was also true. The areas that displayed the highest cancer incident and overall mortality were shown to have low energy water that came from more superficial sources. By flowing through open country, it had lost its ability to sustain health in the ecosystem. Vincent initially tested 3 parameters. The first one was pH, or acid-alkaline balance. Healthy water was more alkaline, degraded water became more acidic. This was found long before the acid rain from industrial gases started to kill our lakes and rivers. Vincent also tested the pH of blood, saliva, and urine and found that in poor health, the internal water was more acidic, especially in the tissues. The more acidic the tissue became, the higher the risk of the ill health cancer and, of course, diabetes. RH2 was the second quality that Vincent measured. This is a measure of energy and reflects the number of electrons in the water. Unfortunately, energized water is called reduced water, and the energizing process called reduction, because the early scientists believed that electrical current flowed from the positive pole to the negative pole. We now know that it flows in the opposite direction, and it is the flow of electrons that does the work, whether in an electrical appliance or in the human body. RH2 is also linked to the reduction oxidation potential, ORP, called redox for short. Again, oxidation means a loss of energy or electrons and a gain of protons and acids, and reduction means a gain in energy or electrons and a loss of protons and acids. RH2 or ORP measures the electron activity or potential of the fluid being measured. Vincent found that water became degraded by flowing through areas unprotected by trees or through distribution pipes. It became more oxidized and lost its electrons. This was associated with a higher death rate in the community served by this oxidized or energized depleted water. It was difficult to ignore that the quality of water being drunk on a daily basis was reflected in the diminished quality of health of those drinking it. Research on the Hunza people of northern Pakistan has indicated that the major difference between these long-lived healthy people and their less healthy brethren is the water they drink. Living in the mountains, they have access to glacier melt from rushing mountain streams. This water is very high in electrons, energy, and minerals. It also is in microform, which means that it has an increased power to dissolve minerals and salts. Resistance, or R, was the third parameter measured by Vincent. This refers to the amount of dissolved minerals in solution in the water. The higher the R factor, the more pure the water. The lower the R, the more electrolytes in the water. Schauberger showed rainwater was immune water and needed to go through a cycle in the soil where it could pick up nutrients and become mature. On the other hand, glacial melt contains many minerals in solution and appears to be one of the main reasons that the Hunza people live so long in such good health. As Vincent started to measure the water compartments in the body, the correlation between drinking water, the quality of water in the body, and the quality of health became undeniable. He developed the BTA, or Biological Terrain Assessment, to determine the alkalinity and energy of the body fluids, including the blood, urine, and saliva. This test can evaluate the acid-alkaline balance and oxidative stress in the body and can be used to predict future health. Professor Vincent's solution was to move to an area of health-giving water, and he purposely withheld the location of the highest quality water that he found for fear that everyone would want to move there and destroy the precious source of this water. There is, therefore, a need to duplicate this water in our homes if we wish to be healthy and free of diabetes, as clearly we can't all live on a mountain or near an energized spring. Water, though necessary for life, can also be detrimental. Contaminated water can cause serious health problems. Even water that has been deemed safe can still cause problems through continued exposure to many of the substances present in it. And a recent preliminary investigation in Norway suggests a possible link between acidic drinking water and type 1 diabetes. Children who consumed water with a pH between 6.2 and 6.9 were 3.7 times more likely to be diagnosed with type 1 diabetes compared to the children drinking less acidic water. Lead author Dr. Lars C. Steen and colleagues report in the September issue of the journal Diabetes Care. Dr. Steen, who is with Aker and Ullevål University in Oslo, and his team evaluated tap water samples from homes of 64 children with type 1 diabetes and 250 healthy children drinking water with a pH of 7 or above. Better is water that has been purified through a proper filtration like reverse osmosis or distillation, and then alkalized and energized through a process of electromagnetic microionization. The most critical need is to correct the loss of electrons in the blood, urine, and saliva, which has been highlighted in Dr. Young's experience working with obesity, hypo and hyperglycemics, type 1 and type 2 diabetics, cancer, and AIDS. The vital importance of the RH2 or ORP measurement to overall health is impossible to ignore. If the blood is found to be oxidized by more than 2 units on the RH2 scale, the scale goes from 0 to 44, 22 being a healthy non-diabetic. This indicates that it has 100 times less electrons than a healthy level, and a person with hypoglycemia or diabetes will usually complain of some degree of low energy. Over 25, indicating 1,000 times less energy or electrons in the blood, then the client is usually suffering from hypoglycemia or chronic fatigue and diabetes with its debilitating low energy. These high levels of oxidation are often associated with high levels of tissue acidity, indicating a generalized increase in aging of the tissue in these conditions. A 40-year-old with hypoglycemia would often say, "I feel like I'm 70 years old," and their BTA test would give them a biological age of 72 years. Also, there's urine RH2, would show 18 to 20, where their blood RH2 would be 25 or greater, indicating a high level of electrons being lost due to excess acidity in the blood and tissues. As these clients reclaim their health by alkalizing and energizing the blood and tissues, their biological age and oxidative stress would fall, and their acid-alkaline balance would normalize. Initially, Dr. Young would suggest drinking alkalized water, But after testing their drinking water, he realized that common sources of water were highly oxidized. I mean highly oxidized, with RH2 values approaching 30 or 10 to the negative 8. That is 100 million less electrons or energy that should be in the blood. It is important to note that all acids are saturated in protons and invigorating to the body. It is the electron that binds to the endogenous acids we create through our inverted ways of living, eating, and thinking that makes drinking alkalized and energized water so critical in reversing obesity or any other serious illness or disease. Because most folks are drinking oxidized and acidic proton-rich water, the body has to add huge amounts of electrons to this oxidized acidic water up to the energy level of the blood, and yet promptly loses this energy again when it is passed out as urine. The figures for a person with obesity are often quite staggering. Most municipalities have, on the average, an RH2 of 30 or greater. This means it has to be 10 to the 8th power less electrons, 100 million less electrons, than the blood needs to be fully healthy at an RH2 of 22. To make matters worse, the urine in diabetics is often loaded with electrons and can be reduced as much as RH2 19. That is 1,000 times more electrons than healthy blood. The reason for the increased urine RH2 is the body is constantly moving out protons or acids created from the fermentation of sugars in the blood and tissues. The total deficit being close to 10 billion electrons per liter of water drunk and urine passed. Clearly, the degraded water we drink and the fermentation of excess blood sugars in a diabetic is acting as a huge drain on energy reserves, causing pancreatic and adrenal stress. After Dr. Young researched the conclusion, he began testing micro water machines from Japan and Korea. These machines would filter and alkalize the water and seemed to be the answer. However, there was just one problem. They did not reliably energize the water and often produced RH2 levels of 26 or higher, still 1,000 times less energy than healthy blood of an overweight person. Dr. Young realized that most all other water machines had a basic flaw. They were all flow-through machines. They were very convenient because they fitted directly to the cold water tap and the micro water came out immediately when the machine was turned on. But the reason that they did not and could not recharge the water to adequate energy levels is that the electrons move too fast in many of the flow-through setups, unless high amounts of electricity are used at high voltage. Electrons move at approximately 4 feet per second, far too fast to adequately charge up the water flowing past the electrodes of all other water machines. So to solve this problem, which is a characteristic of all other flow-through water ionizing machines, he developed water ionizers where the water can be exposed to the direct current for several seconds until it has adequately collected sufficient electrons, creating a highly reduced water with an RH2 of 10 or 12, containing billions of electrons. This technology for making electron-rich alkaline water is now available. Drinking this electron-rich can help neutralize excess acids and restore the blood, tissues, and organs back to a healthy electron-rich alkaline balance.